Hi, my name is Greg Canty, and I'd like to welcome you to the Win Happy podcast. I love chatting to people from all walks of life about their lives and their careers, about the choices they make along the way to pursue their happiness, and what winning actually means to them. I hope you enjoy these conversations as much as I do. Thanks for listening. On today's podcast, I chat about musician, songwriter and author, my good pal Joe Philpott, about his life, his book All Roads Lead to Where You Are, and some new music that he's just released. Joe had the adventure of a lifetime when he and his school buddies headed to America to see if they could make it in the music business with their band Rubyhorse. While his excellent book captures this amazing story, the practice of writing the book has opened a huge door to his overall creativity, resulting in new projects and new music. If you get a chance to grab a copy of the book, it's impossible to put it down once you start. Let's hear from Joe. Joe Philpott.
Greg Canty.
How the hell are you?
I'm good. Good. All good.
Talk to me about the wild horses and Montana.
Running with the Horses was a book I read by a pastor. I can't think of his name. Peterson, I think. It was a long time ago. I read it now, but it really stuck with me. There was a kind of a whole thing about try and run as fast as the horse if you're chasing something, you know. So that's a very simplistic overview of what it was. But I remember like the kind of overriding ambition that used to carry you through things at that age, you know, when you're that young and you're chasing something, chasing a song in our case, around America. And the first time we heard Sparkle on the radio was we were driving through Montana. I mean, Montana's beautiful, like, you know, and it was probably springtime or coming into summer. And I just remember we were in the van, we weren't really expecting it. And we were listening to the radio and Sparkle just came on. And I just remember everybody was roaring in the bus, like, and like turning it up to 20, and just looked out and there was this gorgeous kind of indigo sky and this beautiful, like, I mean, I know what this sounds like. It doesn't sound real, but it didn't feel real. And it's the most cinematic place you could be in, you know, ever, you know, and just, there were just these mad horses running with us, you know. And I just remember kind of being really struck by it and kind of moved by it and kind of thinking, God, this is it. We're running with them. And that metaphor and that image kind of happened in that moment. And in the book, I just kind of retraced my thoughts around it and remembered what it felt like to have that moment. You know, it was pretty special.
Was that the peak of all of that?
Well, in some ways, yes, because, you know, I think even going back to the 80s in Ireland, in school and getting your song played on Dave Fanning was a real thrill, you know, and you'd know it was coming on because he'd say it, like, you know, and I used to listen to him religiously, and he'd say, tomorrow night we'll play a demo from Rubyhorse from Cork, and you'd literally be just thinking about it for 24 hours and waiting, and the radio on at home, and it comes on, and for whatever reason when the song comes on the radio it sounds totally different to the way it sounds like anywhere you're listening to it, and it makes it real, you know. It makes it a kind of a, you're standing shoulder to shoulder with the giants. And I think what it is when you make records or make music or write books or paint, and I've been very guilty of this, so I don't feel bad saying it for anyone hasn't put their record out or written the book. Like, you know, they say there's a book in everyone, maybe that's where it should stay sometimes, but I think it's important as an artist that you put things out, and I think something like the radio playing a song makes it real, you know. Something about having a book on a shelf makes it real. Something about hanging a picture on a wall with a frame, taking it off your 5,000 photos you have it on your phone makes it real. So I think the Rubicon you cross through the airwaves, and you realise when you're driving in your car, and in the case of Sparkle, you know, you can do a gig and drive 100 miles to play in front of 50 people in a 100-seater capacity, and it can feel great. But only 50 people have heard you in that night. Whereas when the song comes on the radio, hundreds of thousands of people can hear you. In the case of Sparkle, it was probably millions. And in Ireland, like 77,000, 80,000 people when John Creedon plays you, or whatever it is, you know. So you think of the impact that can make, and the intimacy of the listener in a car or headphones on at home or whatever it is listening to it, it creates an energy around the song. So to answer your question, it was definitely getting on the radio in America, you see, is a huge task, you know. You have to pass through the eye of the needle, the gatekeepers of cool, whoever they might be at the time, and get approved and get the thumbs up, the Roman thumbs up or the Roman thumbs down. So realizing that Sparkle was actually catching fire across radio, which was really important at the time as a way of breaking a band or partially breaking a band, whatever it was massive. Like, so yeah, I mean, it was huge deal.
Who was in the van with you?
Just the band. We were traveling, like we were on the road at that period of time.
Yeah. How long were you in the States at that stage?
That was probably 2002, I think. So like we'd been there since 97.
Okay, 5 easy years, Joe.
Yeah, they were great. Like, but we went through a lot to get to that point. You know, even with the kind of early success we had out there, we kind of hit the ground running, and then we ran into lots of difficulties for loads of different reasons. Some of them were within our control, some of them weren't. So to even get to that place was quite phenomenal. Like, you know, when all was said and done.
One thing that struck me about the book, I enjoyed it so much, and I think the reader is literally in your head, experiencing every single moment, the highs and the lows and the couch surfing and the excitement and the disappointment and the hangovers and the wild nights and the loneliness. Mm-hmm. So you very cleverly brought the reader to that place, so you experienced it, including that trip down memory lane with, you mentioned Dave Fanning and Radio Luxembourg and you know, the scene around Cork City at the time and everything else. It was gorgeous. What I didn't get a huge sense of from it was the other characters. And they must have been a huge part of you and what kept you going. So can you tell me about the lads and the role each of you kind of played in the band and supporting each other and all that kind of stuff, the characters?
Well, I can. I mean, like, it was, I suppose that's what it was. It was the sum of its parts. You know, like, there's not many bands now anymore in the sense that we were. Street Gang. Grew up on the street together, went to nursery school together in Bishopstown, went to school together, hung around on Convoy all our lives, you know, and moved as a unit, which is extraordinary, really, when you think about that. You think about being young children and then teenagers and young adults and sticking together and having a collective drive to do this all at the same time. It's quite unusual. I don't know if it can exist in the world we live in now. And the only way that was ever going to work was that there had to be a kind of a prisoner's dilemma where we were all moving in the same direction at the same time. Otherwise, it just wouldn't have worked. Because at some point, if that thread broke, it was gone. Like if someone said, I have to get a job, I can't do this. I've got to cash in my degree and whatever it might be, or whatever was going on. So it was quite extraordinary that thread didn't break right up to the point that we decided to leave Ireland. That was probably the breaking point. It was either shit or get off the pot. And, you know, we decided to go for it. So that's testament to everybody's fortitude, I suppose. And I suppose it's discipline over motivation, you know, like motivation is very dangerous, hard to be playing, because motivation is like fool's gold in some respects. Like it's like New Year's resolutions. Go to a gym in January, you won't get on the treadmill. Go in March and you will. Yeah,
but you weren't the boys who came back from Boston with your tails between your legs a month after leaving.
No.
Ireland, you know, back in January.
Yeah, well, that was what we planned.
Yeah.
Like there were bets on with our friends saying that they'd be back by, you know, April, and there were bets on with each other that we'd be back sooner. Like we kind of went there to fail. That was the actual intention in some ways. Was, I think if we all were open about it and if we reflected on what we were thinking at the time, there's no way we were thinking about what happened. You know, that just was, you know, I think the experience was what we were after. Let's go to America, let's have a laugh, and let's come home, and sure, like we can make up the story as to why we're back home. I don't think we were thinking about, you know, actually kind of succeeding or living out there for the length of time we did, you know.
So as well as being the front man, who is Dave like? And what was his role collectively in your gang?
Well, I suppose like we kind of started in as teenagers, and everybody's personalities led the charge, you know. So Dave was always a natural front man, a natural performer. He would have been playing lead roles in school, in the school plays. He would have been very, you know, he would have been a very kind of, you couldn't miss him, like, you know, in terms of his presence and all that. And he happened to have a fantastic voice and was just a natural performer. So even as a kid, he had all that. So he just got better and honed his craft over time. And I think, you know, Gordon was always the drummer in Cork. You know, you'd hear about Gordon Ash playing with Burning Embers, and every band in town, you know, used Gordon as their drummer because he was that good. Like Decky was always kind of a brilliant songwriter and great bass player. Actually, I kind of feel sometimes as a bass player, he never would maybe refers to himself as a bass player, but if you listen to his bass playing, and even people that we've recorded with over the years would have said like, geez, he's a great bass player, you know, he's great phrasing, great kind of like places that he puts the note. And Owen was extremely creative guy, like, you know, brilliant artist, you know, as in like painter, graphic artist, and, you know, he was always very creative as a songwriter, as a player, and as a person in general. So I think we were just very lucky that we had that kind of melting pot of talent and kind of like capability, but it worked as a unit, which is more important. Like everybody kind of played their role, but what one person may have lacked, the other person had. So it kind of just became this really kind of interesting unit.
Yeah, and outside of the music side of it, because what I did get a sense of, you know, I think there were times when you were like looking at the mirror thinking, what the hell am I doing here? And you mentioned homesickness at a few different points. And there must have been a lot of soul searching. To each of you and collectively as lads, was there the optimist? Was there the pessimist? Was there the arm around the shoulder guy? Was there, come on lads, get the fuck out of bed, we have to do something today? Were there, you know, if you imagine the peaks and troughs of how you feel over time? Like, I know I work with Deirdre, you know, in the business. And it's always brilliant doing that with someone else, because 9 times out of 10, if you're hitting a trough, she's not in the same hole and she can pick you up.
Yeah.
You know, so you play a different role at different times. Whereas you had obviously a bunch of guys. So much stuff and confusion and everything. So did you have those kind of roles within the group, you know? And
I think what was probably interesting about it was we all played different roles at different times.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't any one kind of personality as such. Like, if we were ever any of us were ever going through something, genuinely, most of them with a heart and a half rallied around the person who was going through something. Some of us would share rooms with each other. We were traveling, so you'd have a natural. I was with Gordon, Deck and Dave shared a room, and because we were 5, like maybe we'd flip a coin for who had the single room or whatever. Bit of crack, you'd have drawing name out of the hat for that. But you were kind of institutionalized by your actual physical closeness to each other. You know, in a 15-seater Ford with a U-Haul attached to the back of it, and staying in motels and all that. There is romance to it, and but yeah, like, I mean, all of us had personal stuff going on through that time. Of course we did, and you know, everybody kind of. And you would have kind of specific kind of personality-driven roles that would have come to the fore at different times. You know, there'd have been people who would have been very good with people, sitting down doing the charm stuff. There'd have been people who would be much more, I guess, tougher, who would have been more business savvy, possibly, and a bit more kind of cut to the chase in terms of the business side of it. And you know, then you'd Gordon, who was great, and who was humorous, actually. Who was always really funny guy, and like very, very funny. And like, you know, when things were a bit low, he'd have the old school kind of you know, Billy Connolly kind of Marx Brothers kind of slapstick, and then he'd have great stories and jokes and yarns as well. So he was a character with it for that reason, you know. Yeah, it was definitely kind of a mixed bag of things.
Yeah, because you watched teenagers effectively becoming young men.
Yeah.
up close and personal,
Yeah.
squeeze into we're just after watching all the spaceship, what was it called, the Artemis 2, all confined into the small. It must have been that on steroids.
Yeah, what it was, and I mean, I suppose when I think back on it now, it was completely unnatural, actually.
Yeah.
Because, you don't really ever get a situation where, teenagers go on the road together, stay on the road together through their early adulthood, and through all the difficulties that presents on the road as a rock band, and the pressures that come with it, the pressures to be on stage every night and deliver and travel 1,000 miles to get to the next place, and through all kinds of weather, and it's definitely a kind of an unusual discipline to acquire and to grow within it, and sometimes you don't grow. That's the problem. You there's a prolonged adolescence and a prolonged avoidance of the burden of responsibility, and I mean, you literally don't know what town you're in. I mean, I know it sounds like Spinal Tap, but we had the name of where we were written on the bus, just because when sometimes we'd arrive in a place and you're getting off, that you've been sleeping through the night on the bus, you arrive in the back of a stadium or a venue, you park up your truck or whatever it is, you're in catering, and you have no idea where you are, because all you can see is a shed and a load of seats and a load of people, and then you're gone again. So you had an idea where you were, but you didn't really exactly know where you were, as in, for example, if it was Ballincollig or Bishopstown or whatever, and that was the difference. You could be in a different town and you need to know the difference between Bishopstown and Ballincollig, stateside.
Yeah. Were you back and forth a lot?
Yeah, well, not really at the start. I mean, at the start it was every Christmas, which we treasured. I remember the excitement of coming home, and there would always have been a year where we hadn't been home, and Christmas was such a heightened thing here in Ireland, and we usually were coming off the back of something interesting. So just to get off the plane and land at home and get picked up by your buddies. I used to get picked up by my two friends. We used to go straight for an Irish breakfast or a breakfast roll, and then straight into Charlie's in town. Before I came home to my family, I'd have 5 or 6 pints of Guinness in the early morning house, having come from Shannon. And then we'd normally have a gig at Christmas here or something, so it would be a big kind of homecoming kind of thing. And then as the years went on, I got back more and more for different reasons, and I was happy to come back, because I never felt I really wanted to stay over there. Even it's very different over there now. I mean, I couldn't imagine wanting to even go there now. When we were there in the late 90s, pre kind of 9/11, there was an optimism that was like nothing you'd experience as an Irish person, and getting caught in that wave of optimism and potential and possibilities that you just didn't have at home. And I mean, I love being home, but there's a difference between stepping outside your door in New York or Boston or Los Angeles as a musician versus stepping off your doorstep in Ireland, because it's smaller, it's bigger over there. So there's a population and an industry that we just don't have here. So we were getting home more often as time went by, for sure.
You had never done a J1 type of thing, or anything?
No, but that was kind of why we did it.
So it was all wrapped into one, really.
It was kind of like we were kind of looking at our peers kind of do. This was we went for the experience. We kind of wanted to be in California in November under the sun and a palm tree. We wanted to hop into a yellow taxi in New York. We were that cheesy, so we went to feel that, and that's exactly what it is. And when you're in Los Angeles, it is what it is, and when you're in New York, it is what it is. Yeah. And we were loving that,
Immigration was kind of on everyone's lips at that time anyway, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, you kind of were coming off the back of the 80s where it was literally every person you knew, probably, you had 5 friends, 3 of them are gone kind of thing, our family members. What we did really in hindsight was extraordinary, because we actually went about getting our visas, which at the time took a year, and it took a lot of patience on our part. So as young fellas who didn't have any patience, it's even looking back on it now, hats off to us for kind of figuring out how to do that and going through the whole process before we kind of went. But when we went, it was emigration. I mean, that's the one thing that I think is important about the book, is that this is really not just a music story. It's a story of emigration. It's a story that goes back to, in Irish history, and there's an old kind of, there's a poem by Moya Cannon called Carry the Songs.
Good recite it there for you, Joe.
I'd love to. I actually, do you know what? It's funny, because I was listening to a podcast by Martin Shaw recently, and he was saying that, people should take a poem. It's very good for your brain, apparently. Could be the easiest poem and learn it. Take a line a day or 2 lines a day and be able to recite that poem. He said it's really very good for your for your brain.
I'm going to tell you a really stupid thing. Like, I love music. I worship music. Ever since I was a kid, 13, I couldn't sing a song from start to finish.
Yeah.
I don't know the words to a song from start to finish.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most bizarre thing.
Well, it's worth doing by all accounts. So that's going to be my first poem that I'm going to be able to recite. No, but I think the idea came from when people were leaving Ireland. They had nothing. They were going with nothing. In some cases, they were just going with the songs that they knew. Yeah. And they'd say to their mother or a family member, what'll I bring you back? And then they could be going to Newfoundland, or they could be going to the Scotland or England to work, or wherever they were going. And the answer would be, bring me back a song. And they used to, and they'd come back with a collection of songs. And then these songs got taken from here, brought around the world. So I think, we kind of literally did that. We kind of left with really nothing, except the songs we had. And we were retracing that kind of journey, unbeknownst to ourselves at the time. We were doing that, and we were taking our songs and bringing them across America in our case, and bringing them home. And they took on that journey, and I think that's, as immigrants, which is what we were, and we were homeless. We didn't have a place to live, so we were by definition homeless. Yeah. We didn't have any income. We didn't have any money. We had nothing, and it was January, and it was snowing, and it was scary, but we loved it.
Now, did any of you work? Did any of you pull pints in a pub a few nights a week?
I know we did. I mean, all of us would have had. I mean, before we left, Dave's family had a business in town. They had a florist.
Oh, I mean, when you were out there.
Oh, when we were out there, no, no, Jesus Christ, no. I mean, no. The goal was to run as far away from all of that as possible. Like, that was really intentional. Like as a musician and as an artist, it's a state of privilege to be able to create uninterrupted, and the choice you have as an artist is limited, because how do you pay the bills? So in our view at the time, in order for us to be a proper band, we had to go be a band, and we couldn't do that at home because we had to work, whereas if we went to America as musicians, that was our job, was to succeed as musicians. So we didn't do the painting or the landscaping or the building sites, or we went out and we took it on as we were never anything out there other than a band. Yeah,
so you were self-anointed professional musicians the minute you set foot over there, in a way.
But absolutely, but there's a lot to be said for it.
Yeah,
there's a lot to be said for taking away the safety net and just going for it, and not really, boxing yourself in by saying I need 450 quid a week.
Yeah, was that like burning the boats? And this is that the
I just think I think people need to take that risk more, I think.
Yeah.
And not just young people. I think people who are, our age, or, whatever, from their 50s on, need to kind of, I'm 53 now, and I feel like I'm only starting. I think there's a second mountain to everything. I think there's a kind of you reach a pinnacle and you kind of realize, shit, there's another summit there. And I have a great view now. The view being the wisdom or knowledge you have acquired over compound interest build-up of years and decades. What do you have to offer, and where do you want to put it? And you can still do shit you want to do. You don't have to kind of conform, because look at the way the world is. Like, from week to week, minute to minute, we have absolutely no idea what's happening. And if you're chasing everything by figures and money, and you're equating every bit of success you have to how big your bank account is or whatever, you're going to lose, because it'll never be enough. Now, you have to. I understand that the economics of it and the reality of it, but there is still a space to exist within where you have enough, if you're lucky enough, and you don't have to get buried in the rubble of being overly ambitious to the point where what you have isn't enough. And I know that there's a reality that has to run parallel to that, and I know it's difficult. I've been lucky enough to be, for the most part, be creative and be a musician or a writer or whatever I'm choosing to be creatively all the time, so that I'm aware that that's a privilege, and I get it, but it's possible.
But it's a choice that came with sacrifice.
Well, exactly. It's not going to, you
were homeless. You were on couches.
It's
and
not for everybody. Yeah.
It's
when I was younger, in my 20s, it was a crazy way to live. nuts. I mean, I lived on the road. We had apartments and stuff like that when we got signed, but that only came when we got the money from the record contracts. There were apartments we weren't even living in. Like, it was bonkers, like, you know, and we were on the road and we were living like literally, you know, kind of almost bandits. And that was what it was. But that's grand when you're in your 20s. But then you start to hit your 30s and you start having families, and you kind of look around and you're in a kind of a Wendy's in Ohio with the same fellas you were in nursery school with, and you start to ask questions. You start to say, is this okay, what does 42 look like? Because we met those guys out there as well. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to be one of those guys, you know? I wasn't sure if I wanted to be the jobbing, touring musician who had, like, you know, a life in every port and was running from each one you know, I mean, it was that needed to change. So like that prompted the kind of reassessment, I suppose, where we kind of decided that we might need to take a break from this and look
so
at things.
Was that a case of you started to see the reality of what that dream looked like?
Well, I think you need to check in with yourself every decade.
Yeah. And
like the decades go by really quickly. So when you're 22, which we were more or less when we left, and then all of a sudden you're 32 and the decade, it's been amazing. There's been incredible things happen. Magical things you can only dream of. But then when the extraordinary starts to feel really dull, that's scary, that's weird. That's kind of where people turn to other things to get other highs. And when what used to be an extraordinary moment and it becomes just another day, and the big news that you're getting doesn't matter to you anymore, you really have to go, okay, this is worn off. This antibiotic ain't working anymore.
In terms of reinventing yourself, and I do want to jump back to some of the bits in the book in a second, I saw a random Facebook post that you put out a few weeks ago. Again, you brought the reader into the bus. I think you were heading to Galway.
Oh, yes, the Whitehorse Guitar Club stuff, yeah.
And it was just a post you went to, obviously feeling a bit reflective or whatever. I don't remember exactly what you said. And of course, with all the algorithms and everything, God knows how you end up spotting something. But the algorithm, anyway, for some weird reason, picked it out and shoved it onto my phone. And I know you for a good while. I know you for a good while. You're a great buddy. And we had you on the podcast. Believe it or not, I'm up to 360 episodes. I do, and it was episode 29 and episode 30, if anyone wants to go back and hear that full story or whatever. And I knew about the book, and you're thinking, fair play, Joe. Fair play for doing the book. And I spotted you on More Duran and Dahi.
Yeah.
And again, I was thinking, fair play. And I hadn't read the book at that point, and I was listening to them chatting to you, and I got a sense of, I don't know, what they give you, 10 minutes on the couch, and like they do with any guest. And it was like, I suppose 90% of it was that window in your life. And then the last couple of minutes, and to be fair, you were there to talk about the book, so that's really good, and they gave it a huge plug. And then you kind of think, wow, so much stuff would have happened after. But I'd all of that gone out of my head, and I was reading your post. I thought, wow, it's really reflective, and you had me reflecting. You were a really great writer, Joe.
Geez, thanks.
Yeah, and that doesn't have to be about being the best at English and the most poetic person on this earth.
Yeah.
But a reflective writer with a sense that you can take you inside something. And that made me think, I need to get that book.
Well, I think that the key for me at the very start of the whole writing process of writing of the book was the one best bit of advice I got was don't tell people what you did, show people what you did. So I really took that on board. And I think what I've been able to do, even way back when I was younger, I knew I was able to kind of paint pictures of words. I knew that. I knew I was able to put word salad together and dish it up, which is not writing a book.
Yeah.
Writing a book is a very, very difficult thing to do because I just couldn't believe how hard it was. I knew I could write words. I knew I could put something together, like a post like that, quite easily, or a piece for a short journalist's newspaper article or whatever. But the difference between the book is, there's an interesting story there, but it has to. People are going to hold this in their hand, and it's got to be a page turner. It's got to leave people feeling something. You've got to bring people into those rooms. You've got to let them know what it felt like when you sat in Davis Square in Boston, and in that house, in that basement, when you crossed the road to the burn and when you walked into the burn that day, what bring people in to your head.
Yeah, and that now you spoke about the beer and the smoke and the smell and all of that.
So it was really important for me to just try to do that.
Yeah.
And that was hard. That was difficult to kind of just keep that going through the book. But at the same time, tell the story, be truthful to the people in it and make sure that you weren't misrepresenting people, have the facts right, dates right. That's where the discipline over motivation was. That's where you'd sit down on a Monday. I used to get up at like 6:30 in the morning and I used to work till 12:30 every day. I'd go for maybe just take a break at 12:30, maybe get a coffee or something, go for a walk and come back and just try and chisel as much as I can till I started getting tired. And then stop. Once I kind of had an idea for what I wanted to do next, stop there and write just the first sentence of the next day and then start again and do that Monday to Friday or Monday to Thursday and keep going. So that was 15 months of 11 drafts. And like the first draft of your book is shit, always. Apparently that's common. And you need to get to draft 7 before you're at starting point.
So this has been pulled apart and...
Well, it was the beginning of the book I found the most difficult.
Yeah.
So what I decided to do was work backwards because I had the ending in my mind as to how I wanted it to end. So I kind of started there and worked back to the start. But what was really difficult was the start of it, you see, is us here in Ireland and Cork, and the interesting stuff, if you wanted to call it that, is kind of what happened when we left, really. You know, well, I suppose that's not fair either because there were plenty of, but you know what I mean? It wasn't all wham bam, this is amazing, so you have to take the person through that with you. So that's when I decided I was going to start maybe just even as a child, what it felt like to be around my dad and to be in Cork. And what I'm noticing from people reading the book is...
You had a lovely moment with your dad in the book.
Yeah. Well, he came over and like that was important for me to...
Where's that photograph?
That's upstairs in the Rainbow Room above NBC. The Rainbow Room would have been where Frank Sinatra and Tony Bennett and all those guys would have had it's like, it is something out of a movie. And you're overlooking New York, and I just remember sitting there with Dad, and that photo with the Empire State in the background, the towers are gone. And I remember Dad sitting there and he kind of looking out and looking at me, and we just done the Conan show, and he just said, Jesus, you've done all right.
Question was, where do you have that photograph? Is that at home?
Oh, that's at home. I mean, it's in the book, I think, is it? Do I have it in the book? Maybe I don't. I didn't put that one in the book, funny enough, no, because I actually dug it out recently because a guy was doing an article for the Examiner, and I was chatting to him about that moment. And he asked me, had I the photo, and I actually had it, and I sent it. I'll show it to you there in a minute. I have it on my phone. Mom and Dad were always great kind of support, all through the early days, and for them to kind of see that come about was pretty. There's that photo. You can't see this in the podcast, obviously, but to see that all that come to life was pretty cool.
Your dad was a lovely man. We met him a few times.
Dad.
Sound.
He was great. He was a character, for sure.
And I think the reason that journalists wanted to see the photograph is because you brought a moment to life, which, of course, was you and your dad, but it was every person and their dad at a proud moment.
Yeah.
And when we look at that, that's what we see. And
yeah.
But you were able to express that beautifully in the book.
Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of derailed you.
Not at all. It's like, and you're exactly right, because when I was writing that, I wanted that to be for everybody.
Yeah.
I didn't want it just to be about me and my dad. I wanted it to be for me and the lads' dads, and I know that all the lads had that experience in different ways. I know that every one of us have had, if we're lucky enough to have had and I know you were close to your dad, if you've had a good relationship with your father, doesn't matter what it is, like it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It could just be a good Christmas that you had together or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just important that feeling is evoked, which is what I tried to do,
Why did you write it?
The $1 million question. A combination of things. I went to the doctor when I was about 50. I wasn't feeling great. Nothing wrong as such, but I just didn't feel great, I was and I hadn't been to the doctor in a while because I just wasn't sick. I just don't, touch wood, I don't get colds. I don't really get sick, Seriously, touch wood.
Yeah, we're all touching wood at this stage.
Exactly, Sniper Rally and all that. And I just said I better go and then I said maybe I shouldn't because he might tell me I'm sick. But I just went for a checkup and had a kind of comprehensive checkup done. And I was just chatting to him, and I was kind of telling him how, and he kind of was looking at me going, nothing that you're saying doesn't make sense to me. Like, the reason you're feeling the way you're feeling and the reason you are in this moment is because you can't keep going like this. So he was kind of saying, you're in all these lanes, you're doing everything at a high level since you were, or trying to do everything at a high level since you're just going at full tilt since you're young, and you can't keep going like this. He just said, like, if you want to be around healthily in 15 years time, you need to have a rain check on things. And it's not just your health, it's more your what you're actually doing. So something has to give. So you need to make the decision as to what that is, you know. So I went home and I had a chat with Yvonne, and we kind of, she just turned around and she kind of said, look, I think you should give up this because you don't like doing it. You're done with it. Park that. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, what about the money? And like, what, you know, and that was my main concern was, if I drop a few of these things, then my income drops. Therefore,
the practical realities of life. Yeah.
So she said, fuck that. Don't worry about that. You know, you've always been able to do things. When you start something, generally speaking, you'll be fine. So there'll be a bit of pain initially, but then it'll lead to where you're going, etc., etc. And I kind of went, it was a kind of almost like, oh, what? Like, there's a frame of mind that I haven't been in for a while. And so I did. I stopped doing a bunch of things, and I kind of hung on to the things that were making me feel, you know, that these were the paths I wanted to stay on. I didn't want to occupy all these other lanes, so park them. And then what am I going to write about? You know, or sorry, she said, you know, you should write that story, because I'd been talking to Decky and a lot about the story, and geez, it's a great story. And I had actually spent a night speaking to somebody, a friend of ours, Mark, who helped kind of he made me tell the story from start to finish one night, you know, over a few glasses of wine. And I was like, Mark, like, seriously? He said, no, I want to hear the whole thing. And I did. And he said, Joe, like, that's the book. Like, you've got to write that down. And I was like, yeah, you know, like, there's an enormous amount of fear when you're the guy who's writing, or because it feels a bit fraudulent. It feels a bit, I had massive imposter syndrome. I kind of felt a bit ridiculous, because when do you call yourself a writer? There was a famous thing, was it Seamus Heaney was saying, you know, you can never refer to yourself as a poet. That has to be bestowed on you by someone else. Equally with a writer, you know, if somebody said to me, well, what are you doing? I'm writing and I'm playing music. It's like, well, what's that exactly? Yeah. So there was a lot of that kind of stuff going on. So 2 reasons I had to tell the story, because it was in me. And if I had to tell it now, I wouldn't be able to do it. I think I had one shot at getting this out the way I did it on paper, pen to paper, and I would not be able to do that now. Absolutely wouldn't be able to do it. So just to get that out, and then to try it, I guess, Ivan had been encouraging me to write for years, but I just didn't know where to start, you know, where to go, or what would I write about, or who would even be interested in reading anything I have to say, and all that doubt you have about everything screaming at you constantly, you know. So
yeah. So another lesson: listen to your doctor, listen to your wife.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? If you put it like that, it's there's 2 pillars in that definitely I sat between and listened, and then I just got into it myself, and it snowballed, you know, as things do.
Yeah. So good advice by the doctor. And when it comes to maybe someone, you know, jumping up in the helicopter and looking down and just giving you that kind of view, it struck me as well in the book that you didn't have those characters to really help you properly at the right time. There were lots of people, and at one point in time, the easiest thing of all was a record company. Just write a big check and there you go, and all the resources. But the rock star mentors weren't there, really. You know, someone doing something else. But like your man, Jeff Kramer.
Yeah.
Like, he was no good to you. He was off with Dylan, like, you know, and like a fantastic senior guy. That's not what you needed.
Well, you see, the irony of it is we had the rock star managers.
Yeah.
That was the problem. Like, they were too high level for us.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they weren't what you needed.
We needed a more... But you see, you were always caught between a rock and a hard place with this kind of thing. You know, if we didn't have Jeff, some of the really amazing things that happened mightn't have happened. We wouldn't have gotten off the Interscope contract scot-free, which we did. Yeah. If Jeff wasn't negotiating that exit. So we had a lot of power players. What we lacked was a kind of a... Like, you see, if you take the U2 as an example, and Paul McGuinness, okay, close to home example.
It's a Paul McGuinness that we're talking about.
Well, it's somebody who's really aligned to...
Yeah.
your vision and is with you day by day, step by step, that you're sitting down every day, that they're in the van with you, which McGuinness was at the start with the lads. And, management is an interesting thing because nowadays it's management companies and it's kind of like, it's just tons of people, doing kind of tons of different things, and it's big operation. We were kind of going at it like the old school way where you had the band and their manager. But what was happening with us was our managers were so big that they were missing the kind of moments. Like, for example, one of the most ridiculous things that happened to us was when Sparkle was rocketing up the charts. We had no video. And at the time, a video wasn't like now where, it was MTV, VH1, and they were screaming at us. And if you got on A-list play or B-list play on VH1, you were huge.
Yeah.
And we were right at that door. Door was open. Come on in. You have to have your buzzer to get in. We didn't have our buzzer. And our manager was in Switzerland with Bob Dylan. And at the time, he was getting these things sent to the hotels. He wasn't in, he was gone. And then he'd miss it. And so we had a very short window to get that done. And then it didn't happen. So you've only 6 months really, although because the song then started going down the charts.
Of course it did.
So the label get impatient and they go, okay, we need to move on to the next thing. What's the next thing? And then they realize there's no Sparkle Part 2. Your next single is a ballad, which is Any Day, which is better song than Sparkle, arguably. But in terms of radio, it's not the same. It's long. It's 4.5 minutes. It's slow-ish, mid-tempo.
It's a great song, though.
A really good song, but it doesn't have where do you go? And in America at the time, radio was sectioned into different formats. You had kind of AC, top 40, adult, this, that, the other thing. So we were kind of suggesting going, the same route, say David Gray was heading, but they were saying, but no, you've already broken in pop rock, so you can't now switch to. I think he was categorized as something else. I can't even remember what, and. That was it. It was kind of like, okay, well, you don't. And then we were saying, well, look, and then George had died. So the Beatles collaboration thing was kind of off the table as well. In the sense that
you didn't want to milk that.
Well, we didn't want to milk it, but also it was gone. We had talked about performing with him at something. There was very early chats about that. And there was talk about us being nominated for a Grammy duet. Now, all these things are constructed, by the way. They're curated, they're constructed. There's an awful lot of bullshit behind it. So, for example, if Jimmy Iovine, who we were signed to at the time, wanted us to be at the Grammys with George Harrison, he'd have made it happen. So that conversation was possible while George was alive and while Jeff was managing us and while we were signed to Interscope. When George died, when we fired Jeff, when we weren't on the label anymore, that dissolves like disprin in a glass. It's gone. Just as easy as it came about. It's gone. So there are your windows. We jumped through a bunch of them that other people wouldn't even get through. We got through loads and loads and loads of them. And then at this point in time where we started hitting crossbars, at the penalty shootout, it was
it kind of felt like that in the book. You're nearly there. Those moments kind of
it's they're crossbar moments. Yeah. You're in the Champions League final and you're coming up to take the shot and you hit the crossbar. You didn't miss the goal.
Yeah.
Well, you did, but you didn't blaze it wide, but it's still not a goal.
And in the book then, there's some gorgeous characters. I was intrigued by so many of them, and I'm thinking, this is so good actually. Actually, it's probably a good little hint or signal that the writing was so good. I was thinking, I'd love to get that character on the podcast and figure out what do they end up doing next. The character I was most interested in, I think, was, and I put the word poor before his name.
Right.
Poor Tim Collins.
Oh, yeah.
No, am I right in saying poor Tim Collins? Because this poor guy, you gave him a hard time.
Tim had been with Aerosmith. What happened with Tim and Aerosmith is well documented by all the band's accounts of it, by the books, by the MTV documentaries. And ultimately they accused him of lies, manipulation, you name it. They went hard, and it was a terrible situation for them and ultimately for him, I guess, to some degree. At the time when we got involved with Tim, it was a massive coup. I mean, he had just come out of the Aerosmith thing. There was a big load of shit that happened through that. He was the biggest, still one of the top managers in the world in terms of the industry. And he had a lot of power and an axe to wield. And unfortunately, we arguably were the axe, you know. He wielded against some of his enemies. And that's just my opinion. And as a result, we were left very vulnerable to lots of different things at a very crucial time. Now, Tim also was an advocate. He was one of the hugely involved in artists' recovery from drugs and alcohol. And he was a recovering alcoholic and addict himself. So he had a very linear, strict view on alcohol and everything like that. It was a very intense part of his life. And we just wanted to be open with him, and we took him home to Ireland for Christmas.
Yeah, and that's the story I'm getting to, because
which was like,
I can picture him.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the book, and it's a very funny part, so I don't want to kind of spoil it for anybody who's reading, but I just give you, it was crazy. It was, and like, you know, I mean, to be fair to him, and, you know, I want to appeal to my better self and give him some grace and space as well. Like, I mean, you know, I'm not sure if he knew fully what he was getting into with us. You know, we definitely weren't going to toe the line to the degree that he would have needed. You know, a young band from Ireland at the time, like, we're not going to go to Arizona and go through therapy that they didn't need, you know, which is what he probably wanted us to do, and arrive at a point where we had a very different relationship with how we wanted to live our lives. We weren't addicts. We weren't alcohol wasn't a problem for us. Drugs weren't a problem for us. But he couldn't exist in a space that there was any flexibility around it, you know. So that was definitely.
It was an unusual story about him in that he wanted to meet your families.
Yeah, like, but even all that's like weird, you know. Like, I mean,
pretty much is. Did he not have his own family and stuff like that?
Do you know what it was?
Christmas?
I have no clue. I mean, when we signed at that time, it was head melts, Phil. Like, I mean, we were young guys. This happened to us. This unbelievable industry, like, bidding war where every person in the world was trying to sign us. It was crazy. And then we had this massive manager who was literally constructing us, but we're from Cork. We're not going to be constructed by anybody, you know. And like, he needed blank slates, which we weren't. He needed people to go yes, yes, yes to every step. Now, he was probably right in lots of ways. If we had followed these paths that he was painting for us, we probably would have gotten like a lot of the deals that we probably shunned, or you know. But he came home, I think, to meet our parents and our families to get in his mind, it was to get a sense of where we came from and who we were. Again, it was probably data building, but sure, you know, I mean, it was bonkers. Like, you know, I mean, our parents kind of at Christmas with this big manager guy coming in and, you know, kind of sitting down, having a meal, asking about almost like a grilling of your life stories, you know. Like,
in your head, can you still picture him sitting at the kitchen table?
Oh yeah. I mean, like, it was lovely. I mean, it was my parents for sure were delighted. It was just another night. Who's this?
How's it going, boy?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, Dad was, you know, and Tim was asking them about everything and like looking around the house, and, you know. But I think it was more about getting to know us, you know, and because in his mind, he was constructing a band that was going to have a backstory, and he was going to link all this into the launch of the band with the label. And, you know, at the time, that's how bands were kind of constructed. Like,
did he care about you?
Nah, he didn't give a shit about us.
Okay, because they're coming over you kind of got a sense of.
No, he
was the manager taking them.
No. I mean, like, we ended up having to, like, no. I mean, like, ultimately, it was awful. Like, what happened? You know, it was a real problem. Like, because it was kind of like we needed him at that time to man up and to kind of like guide us, like, and he didn't. And thankfully, Jimmy Iovine, who was the biggest, you know, industry person in the world, told us explicitly when we told Jimmy that we were getting rid of Tim. Jimmy said, "Fuck Tim Collins, I'm signing you guys." And we were like, "Oh God." And that's kind of like what probably brought us to Interscope versus Sony. Tim had a deal with Sony, verbally kind of agreed, and we didn't want to go with Columbia, Sony. We never felt that was our home anyway. Jimmy Iovine and Interscope, and Steve Robalski, who signed us actually, who's an absolute gentleman, and to this day is a good friend of mine, was the real deal. And that really... Now, A&M actually was where we wanted to go initially. Al Cafaro and David Anderley, who were amazing people, and the ethos behind A&M, if you read about it, it's beautiful, like, and how they broke bands. They were the last of the really great labels, but our lawyer Peter Paterno he knew, he inside tracked that there was this massive merger coming and they were going to be the first to go. So he said, you can't sign with them. Even if you loved them, they're just not going to be there. And they weren't. They were the first victim of that initial massive merger. So look, there was a lot of industry stuff. I kind of delved into it a little bit in the book, and I tried to make it not boring. I tried to make it for a reader, oh, that's interesting, and gave enough of the information for people to go look for it if they need more. But it was a massive part of the kind of false start that we had with the combination of Tim and all that happened with him, the label and the kind of Napster thing kind of happening while we were making the record. So we kind of were involved in a kind of a perfect storm of stuff that would have actually broken most bands or sank them. We actually got through it, which is actually amazing when I think about it. This is all pre-Sparkle now. This is all pre... So even the fact that we got through that, actually, now that I'm even talking about it, is bonkers. Like,
the day you decided to leave the States, do you remember packing up your stuff?
I do. I remember it well. I did a gig in, God, where was it? It was in Massachusetts. It was like just outside Boston. I was playing in, it might have been Northampton. I'm not quite sure. Not too far. My sister was working with Aer Lingus at the time. She was a flight attendant with Aer Lingus, and she was over with my other sister, I think. They both came over. Actually, no, she was there on her own. And I finished the gig. I walked off stage. I went back to her hotel and I flew out with her the following day. Left everything. Didn't take anything home. Nothing. Left my apartment, everything in it. Left all my gear, my guitars, which I knew were coming over because we had a show in the Opera House. We had a tour booked in Ireland for that October, or that kind of November, October period. And I kind of knew that the gear was coming back. Actually, not all of it, just the bare bones of what I had. And I remember I had one suitcase. That was it. Left everything. I don't know where half the shit is.
Yeah.
I think there's so many guitars, so many amplifiers, so many bits of gear, all my apartment stuff. Like I rang a guy and said, you can have it all. I don't want it. Everything is there. I was sharing with two other lads at the time, because I had my own apartment, and I was on the road so much I gave that up. So I actually moved in with two buddies when I was in Boston, and just before I left, that's where I was kind of I was kind of between Nashville, Atlanta, Boston, while I was traveling, and just left all my stuff. I left everything. It was gas, actually. Like, it was kind of bonkers. It was really funny, actually, because I got an email from a friend of mine kind of like 2 years after I left, and he's like, you round for a pint? In Boston.
Yeah.
I was like, I've been in Ireland for the last 2 years. He said, what? Like, people actually didn't know I was gone, because the lads were still out there, and they were still knocking around. They weren't active as a band or anything, but people just assumed, oh, the lads are around,
And leaving all this stuff behind, was that in a way just shedding that skin?
Yeah.
Just rejecting?
It was amazing. It was just so incredible to not give a shit. Really, I wasn't hurting anyone. I wasn't doing I didn't know anybody anything. I wasn't running from anything. So it was just so lovely to kind of just collapse into kind of nothing, for about a month, until I realized, shit, what am I doing? But it was really and truly a kind of when you do that, I think it's good to do that often in life.
Yeah.
You don't want to walk away from people you love, or put people in the shit, or hurt people. But for yourself, every now and then, it's just good to walk away and just kind of go, no, I'm done. But not attach yourself to anything if you can. Like, there's a thing that says, if you're swimming and you've got your ankles, an 8-foot rope attached to someone's ankles and arms, if they go down, you go down. But sometimes, like, if you've got yourself attached to stuff, shit you don't need, that'll take you down as well. So it was really liberating, like, to have 6 pairs of jeans and 8 t-shirts and 4 jackets and whatever I had on the conveyor belt in Shannon.
And we do get locked into things, don't we?
Completely. Like, it's all bullshit, all of it. Like, it's kind of, honest to God, if you did a kind of an inventory in your own life and you said, okay, if I got rid of 70% of the shit I have, wouldn't it be great? Because I wouldn't have to think about this, that, and the other thing. I do it all the time because I think it's amazing. I did it today, actually. I was thinking today, I had some time today to think, and I kind of went, is there anything else I can get rid of? It's like barbecuing, is there anything else I can barbecue? It's like you're looking at your rubber ducky going,
not today, Joe. It's a bit, it's a little bit gloomy.
Yeah.
What did you learn from that process with the book yourself? Did it change you, do you think?
The thing I learned the most was I spent a lot of time on my own. I had all my life I've been working in groups and ensembles and in teaching environments or concerts, or all my working life has been around people. And I would always have thought that I enjoy people and enjoy crowds and enjoy being out and being around things. But as it turns out, I don't. And I just thought that the spending time in silence and quietness and thought was, for the most part, really good. Dangerous as well at times, because when you're on your own a lot, it's a very different existence to when you're not on your own a lot, stating the obvious. What I realised through it was I enjoyed the process of thought and of contemplation and of reflection and all these things, because that's where I'm at in my life right now. And in order to be able to push forward and do, I still do things. I'm still playing loads of shows and touring and still in a bus with the band and the guitar club, still in that. But it's all very much, it's not life or death. It's not every day of my life. It's not, I'm not doing it, living through it with a sense of unease and discomfort and confusion as to why I'm not enjoying it. It's all about kind of trying to have the experience but not have it cost me. So I learned that being on my own and away from chaos and away from noise and away from nonsense is really great at a certain point in your life. You don't, again, it goes back to the shedding thing. It goes back to, do I really need to be out there? Do I really need to be this, that, the other thing? So yeah, I definitely kind of took something from that, I think.
Was there a little hole there when you didn't have to do these 4 hours of writing every day?
It's funny because I was like, when I finished the book, and look, first of all, John Breen in Waterstones, it wouldn't have happened without him. Like I had no intention of putting the book out before Christmas. I had this stupid plan that I was going to wait till after Christmas when nobody buys books.
Yeah.
And no one cares about books until they go on their summer holidays or whatever it is. John rang me one day. I gave him the book and I just dropped it into him, and he said, "Oh, thanks, but I'm not going to be able to read that till after Christmas because I'm so busy." And I knew that. I said, "No, I'm just giving it to you." And a couple of days later, I got a phone call going, "I love it. It's a really good book. Are you ready to put it out?" And I was like, yeah, I'll be putting it out in the new year. He said, "What? That makes no sense. You need to have it out before Christmas. Yeah. This is November." And I'm like, okay. So he kind of said, "We'll stock it." And that was the starting point then, and the catalyst to kind of get it moving. And Justin and the guys in Coolgrey were very helpful with getting it kind of printed up, and they had a contact, that they use for their other books people that they've worked with. And it was rushed then to get it over the line, and it was out. It was very well received, and I got asked to do it. Very grateful to have been on lots of shows, and that was really nice. And you're kind of going, but then you're kind of going, oh my God, I'm actually on all these shows talking about myself, which is something I had never done, because any interviews I'd always have done would have been band stuff or about the music or how did you make the album or who did you work with, and so you're always hiding behind that. Whereas this was like, right, tell us about this, it's like what we're doing now, I suppose. So I enjoyed that. And then I was kind of realising as time is going on now, and I'm doing the Cork World Book Fair on Tuesday, and I'm doing Listowel Festival with Billy Keane who's interviewing me inside in John B. Keane's pub, which is actually pretty cool. I'm really looking forward to that. And there's a load of these nice kind of experiences around it, but I'm kind of thinking, what am I going to do next? Or am I going to do anything next? Is there a next? And I write every day about different things, and some of them are posts that you read there about. And
is that a deliberate act? I'm going to write now. So that's locked in, is it?
Well, I have to do it now because, I said I would. So, and I'm enjoying it. But there's the muscle you need to exercise. It's now if you don't do it every day, every day isn't a good day. Some days the stuff you're writing is terrible. It's not great. It's just whatever. It doesn't have any meaning or it doesn't have any resonance to it. But you have to, if you're going to sharpen the tools and kind of get good at it, you have to do it every day. So I try to do it every day, but I don't know what I'm doing,
So where are you writing? That purposeful writing? Is that, I know you mentioned Facebook or whatever. Are you doing that purposeful writing in other platforms or?
Just myself at the moment.
Oh, okay.
I'm just writing every morning. I try and keep a routine. I get up really early. And for this time of year is lovely because it's bright at it's starting to get bright now at 5:30, 4:45. It's gorgeous. So I get up when I wake up, and I could have 5 hours done before I'm doing this, up making breakfast or whatever it is I'm doing with with Mossy and getting him out to school with Ivan and myself doing that, So again, it's that solitude time. It's that time where you're just literally doing it, and you're doing it in a kind of a structured, disciplined way. What I'm writing now, it makes no sense whatsoever as a piece. It has absolutely no sense. It makes no sense. There's some very good things there. There's some very good parts and interesting kind of anecdotes and reflections, actually, and kind of other situations that I've been through in life that are, some of them are work related, some of them are interesting from an observational point of view and a reflective point of view, which seems to be where I'm kind of leaning towards, Is
that your little kind of sweet spot?
I don't know. I can kind of make sense of things to myself. Do you know what I mean? As in, I can look at something and kind of write about it and in a reflective way and attach it to other things and create a picture. But then that, it's got to have meaning for other people. That's grand for me to read it and have a bit of crack with it and go, oh, that's nice. But if I was ever to put something out again, it would have to be very good. I'd have to feel myself that this is really good. Otherwise, I just won't bother, I think what's important too, and what I'm learning, I really admire lots of different writers locally. But what I'm learning is that, there's no rush on this. If I don't do anything for 5 years, so what? You know what I mean? It's like, if the next thing you do isn't good, then sure, that's terrible. That'd be awful to kind of put out a load of shite just because, you've done one thing.
And tell me, does the creative energy or that creative act of writing, does that feed your other creative outlets like the music? Or do they?
Yeah,
is there so much creative space?
No. Well, the really interesting thing for me out of all of it was I started writing songs again. I hadn't written songs for a long time because I don't know. It's actually, I don't know why. I guess you talked about roles early on, and defined roles within bands. My role in Rubyhorse became not being a writer, because you can't have everyone writing. Decky happened to have a style of writing that really worked for Rubyhorse and worked for Dave. There was no point in me and Owen writing as well, because there were completely different styles of writing. So how does that work? It doesn't. So I stopped, in my kind of 20s. I didn't do it anymore. And then when I worked with other people, I was generally working with other people as a guitar player or as a producer or as a kind of a soundscaper. Or in the back of my mind, I parked the whole notion of writing songs. And when I finished the book, I had loads of instrumental things that I'd been writing again, not thinking in terms of me being I'm not a very good singer. I have an okay voice. It's not I wouldn't ever be I wouldn't be a good enough singer to do it professionally or to carry a whole show. I'd be good in ensemble singing or backing singing or whatever, but I wouldn't have a very strong front voice. So that was my limitation as a writer. I was never going to be able to write a song and deliver it myself. It would have to be someone else.
So not singer-songwriter.
Yeah. So therefore there was lots of kind of reasons kind of not to do it. So I started working on instrumental stuff, which I did through COVID, actually. I have a bunch of stuff that I did that I'm going to put out eventually, but it's all instrumental. Anyway, I was sitting down one morning and Ivan had just gone out to bring Moss to school. The book was out and I had a lovely chord sequence that I put together for another person, actually. And I kind of went, that's actually not really, that's mine. It's not really, that isn't the sequence in the song. It's slightly different. So I had an open tuning on the guitar and the book was in front of me, All Roads Lead to Where You Are. And I just sang the chorus literally out of nowhere. And I kind of got a shock and I went, what the hell is that? Took out my phone, recorded the whole song in a kind of 5 minits. And it was done, finished, everything, like melody, chords.
So you have a song?
Oh, it's released. It's been on the radio and everything. And
sorry, jeez, it's behind the
no, not at all. It's just out, it's relatively new, so it has been. And I got Liam Ogue then to sing, Liam Ogue Fitzgerald from the Guitar Club, but his voice, it was like it was written for him, So I kind of sent it to Liam, thinking I knew Liam wouldn't do it if he didn't like it. I was like, would you be interested in singing on this? And he was like, I'm all over it, boy. So he sang it and we recorded it with Decky and put it out. And I have a new one coming out next week. Well, not next week. It's been mixed at the moment. It'll be middle of May, follow up to it. So my idea is that I'm continuing to write these songs, which are from the book. They're kind of based around stories in the book and titles and moments. And I'm going to get different singers to lead the charge on them. And there's various other things going on as well. I mean, and all of it, to answer your question, is born out of that initial shedding. The kind of moment where I went, I'm not occupying those lanes anymore. Therefore, now there's space for other things to come through. These things wouldn't have happened if I didn't create that space, and that's kind of where all that creative stuff. And then when you lasso something to the moon, like, or to the stars, which is what creativity is, you're taking a risk all the time because you don't know what it is. What happens is you align yourself to that. Like Rick Rubin suggests that creative people are receptors. So, like, if you have an idea, and this, when I say creative people, no, it could be in business as well. If you have an idea, if you don't act on it, someone else is going to act on it, because it's the whole thing is spinning around the universe. It's there, and we're all just like these like receptors. And if you say, "Oh, you know, I think that would be great," and then if you put it out there, if you even have a conversation with someone about it, it's universally owned, and it'll land on someone else's desk if you don't do it.
Yeah,
you know. So that's what can happen.
Okay, so that creativity tap opened up all the other avenues as well that had just been sitting there.
Yeah, dormant. Yeah. And it's funny because when I look back on it now, I mean, Decky even said it to me, like, when we were recording the song, because he said, like, "Geez, I love the song," and I was like, "Geez, yeah," and he said, like, "Why did you ever stop writing?" And I kind of looked at him going,
"That's your fault."
That's your fault. No, I just said, I kind of didn't even think that. You know, it's funny what you think about yourself sometimes. You put these limitations on yourself because you think that that's what other people are thinking. A, who gives a shit what they're thinking? B, they're not thinking that.
Yeah.
You know, you have to kind of like transcend that level of kind of insecurity and have the balls to kind of stick your neck out and kind of go, actually, I'm going to do it, like, you know. And that's what happened with the music that I'm putting out as well, is like, I just kind of went, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. You know, why shouldn't I? What's the reason not to?
Because one of my questions was going to be, where are you with music now? And you're after answering that.
Well, that's my own stuff. I mean, obviously the guitar club is a huge part of my life, and it's a massive thing. And
it's a giant now, isn't it?
Yeah. That's a mad what that's become. And that's, again, an extension of who we all are. It's kind of a group thing, and hugely privileged to be part of it. And I'm really enjoying that, loving the way that that's reaching people and the spirit and the heart that's in it. And the great guys, very talented guys in it as well. I mean, Joe Carey is a very good songwriter, singer, performer. We've got some great singers in the band, Lee Moog, Anthony. You know, everyone's got something to give. Like every single one of them has something to give. And that the collective force of that then is quite powerful to be immersed in it, like, you know.
Wow. Yeah, not so bad, Joe.
Yeah. It's so far so good.
So, what's happiness to you?
Peace of mind, I think. Internal peace. Being able to, like, if you can't find happiness on a yacht, you're not going to find happiness in a cup of coffee, you know. So, I think the striving for kind of things that are, that whole race and when your mind is spinning all the time is so unappealing to me now. So to be I was down in Ballyferriter last week with my family, just sitting down, pissing rain outside, fire was lighting, we were reading books, watching TV. That to me is enough, you know, having those moments. And that's an age thing too. Like, you know, I probably wouldn't have felt like that when I was in my 20s. Definitely didn't feel like that. Like when you're in your early 50s, I do feel like that. And I kind of treasure those moments of kind of peace and when you don't feel badgered and threatened and bamboozled by which we are externally anyway because of what's going on in the world. The world's never been at this boiling point where we've kind of almost maxed out our kind of mining of every resource we have to the point where there's none left. And we have this kind of affluenza now where, you know, the symptoms of it are like, I mean, 100 years ago, having a hot shower was a luxury. Even kings didn't have it. Everyone has it now, more or less. You know, I like, not saying that we should bring ourselves down to that level of brass tacks, but where we are in the world right now, like, we need to ask serious personal questions about our contribution to it. And, you know, like, blaming everybody for everything is never going to work. Reassessing everything on what's our responsibility, what can we do within our immediate vicinity. And for me, it's just trying to find that space where there's just not chaos and not bombardment, and that's it, really. And protecting my family and protecting my kids from as much as I can protect them from is hugely important, you know. And I don't really know how to do that as such, but I know how to try to do it, which is what I try to do. And I think just the peace of mind internally is really important, like, you know, that you're not kind of every day in chaos.
What's winning to you?
Winning?
Yeah, you know, we talk about putting the ball in the back of the net and that feeling that it gives you. You mentioned lots of hitting crossbars. What gives you that ball in the back of the net feeling?
Do you know, I think in the context of what I do, I suppose, it's just the landing within the moment. Say, for example, if it's a gig and it's finished and the crowd are standing up and they've obviously been moved and you've brought them to a place that they didn't expect when they came in. They've come in on a Friday or a Saturday after a hard week's work or upset. And like what we get a lot from the Guitar Club, for example, is we hear from people directly saying that they had a shit week or they were going through something, and the 2 hours with the Guitar Club on stage helped them to go through all the gamut of the emotions, the laughter, the crying, but they also were able to forget about something that was bothering them. So that's a real special thing. Like I never take that for granted, because I don't think everybody who goes to a concert experiences that with who they're seeing. And it's very much a shared experience. So like, I think that for me, in terms of like the goal of what we're trying to do on stage, is to bring people to that place and have that moment of transcendence between the band and the audience. That's kind of hard to explain. Aesthetic arrest, I think, is what Joyce called it, where you're looking at a piece of art and you have no idea why it's taking you out of what you're feeling. It's just changed the molecules of your thoughts and yourself to the point where you're not really thinking about what's going on in real time. You're kind of after moving into something else, into another space, even momentarily. So that's the goal.
There's a camaraderie and a friendship and kind of a circle of brotherhood or something that comes with the White Horse Guitar Club. You know, you tick the box on the music and you tick the box on the good songs. But I think it brings something out in everyone who's watching it.
Yeah.
You're kind of tapping into some sort of a collective or something.
Yeah.
For that hour and a half or whatever that you're sitting there. So it's not like a normal gig, I would say.
No, it isn't. And I think I kind of am starting to understand why that is. I don't understand what that is, but I kind of understand why it's happening, starting to understand why it's happening. That's something you need to be very mindful of yourself as a member of that group, because like you can lose that by virtue of allowing the things that will stop that from happening in. And it's been going on for 13 years. So far we've managed to kind of stay true to what it is and to kind of like enhance the spirit of what it is to the point where it's actually becoming its own thing out, even outside of us. So if we can stay out of the way of it and not get in the way of it, we'll be doing very well, you know.
Not always that easy, is it?
No, it's not. It's very challenging. I mean, like, you have 11 different people, very different people with very different lives, not full-time in it for any stretch of the imagination. And, you know, it's been extraordinary that we have managed to keep it together, because very few things stay together for any period of time anymore.
You seem to be good at it, you know, within the Rubyhorse, like he knocked a long time out of that, you know. And,
yeah, but that's where I learned how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, that's, I guess, a skill set in itself. Like, you need to know how to coexist with people and coexist with egos, including your own, so the ego thing doesn't destroy what the thing is, because that's what happens to any group, any relationship, any friendship, any partnership, whatever it might be. It's the ego will destroy it. It's when people start going to that part of themselves and using that as what they're leading the charge with, you're screwed immediately. That and money, they're the two things that will destroy anything.
So what's the trick?
Eliminate money from the equation, if you can, is the first thing. And the second thing is to ask why always. The first thing you ask yourself when something arises in you or arrives at your feet is, why do I want to do this? Why am I feeling this way? If you check in with it, usually speaking, you'll have an answer fairly quickly. Because if you check in with yourself and with your ego first, and if the ego is talking, you just have to get that out of the way, because that's going to fuck everything up. And then if you're not doing it for the right reasons and the right experiences, then it's going to be a disaster. So, for example, with the Guitar Club, what we try and do now is we try and make everything an experience. Like, if we're going to Doolin, we want to experience whatever that is. You know, stay in a nice place if we can, have good food, do something, you know, around the trip, and really enjoy it and enhance it, and, you know, make sure that we all come away from it with some value other than money. Because if it's always about money and always about making a buck, that is the end of it before it starts. It's over. Like, and I'm not adverse to it. Might sound like some fella who doesn't want to make money, but that's not the point. The point is that if you're doing it for the money only, it's over.
But if you think about it, a lot of people don't have the benefit of working in arts and we are punching in our 9-to-5s and all that kind of thing. But the same argument can apply, isn't it? If you're doing this just for the money, just forget about it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I'm talking about, like, I would have been the same when I was in kind of like regular kind of not so much. I was always working in the context of music, but if I was teaching or if I was in jobs like that, I was given for a period of time, I wouldn't have done it if just for the money. I'd never have said, "Oh, they've offered me X." Oh no, I'd be like, "I'm not doing it." So like I've turned down things that would have, the only reason to do it would have been the money. Loads of my friends are experiencing the same thing at the moment. A lot of people I know are taking early retirement. They're maybe not cashing in on the full pension because of it. But you know what? They're thinking, I don't know. They're thinking, I'm not sure if I want to be in this for another 10 years and waste those. Like my dad retired from teaching when he was 55.
Yeah.
And he died when he was 68, just turned 69. And that 15 years or whatever it was, 13 years was the best 13 years. He was traveling around the world. He did loads of holidays. He did lots of things, and he wasn't waking up every day he didn't have a dose of the Glenrose every Sunday night for the last decade and a half of his life. You know, so I mean, had he not done that and went all the way and got an extra whatever he was going to get per month to have a full, like, was that going to be worth it? Like,
yeah, the biggest check isn't the check that they give you; it's the check of your time.
Yeah. And like we all have to do things, and like, it's ridiculous to be painting utopia or to be trying to say that we don't have to face into our responsibilities. We all have to do that. But there's a whole pile of space around that then, though, you know, after you've done that, or if you're in a position where you've done a lot to kind of get yourself to a point where you don't have to think too much about things. You know what you need to do to keep the wolf from the door. But how much more on top of that do you need? Do you know what I mean? That's kind of what I'm saying. It's not like, turn your back and everything and bury your head in the sand and forget about your response. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, like, if we've all worked very hard for long, long decades at different things to arrive at a place where, okay, well, maybe there is actual space here to kind of look at things differently and to put more value on things other than just monetary value, or what impact are we making for other people? What use are we in the world as it stands? Are we using whatever voice we might have, big or small, to make a difference within what's in front of us? And then there is an argument that will have an effect. There'll be a kind of a knock-on effect. And if we all applied that, and we're all distracted as well, you see, by everything, so we don't have time to address things, and we don't have the energy because come Friday night we're so bait.
Oh, you're walloped.
You're walloped. Like, so where do you get the time to even forget about yourself? Where do you get the time to do something for someone else? You know,
yeah. Or maybe, Joe, buy a great book, sit down and have a bit of peace.
Well, there you go. And there's your Friday night.
Yeah.
Don't watch the Late Late Show. Read my book.
Yeah, but it's a very, very simple message.
Yeah.
So if you can't get it in the bookshop around the corner that you might go to, where can I get the book?
It's available on Amazon Kindle right now, and it's it's coming out. It's in most bookshops. That local bookshops will get it for you if they don't have it already. And I sell it at gigs as well. So any White Horse guitar club, anywhere I am, like publicly, there'd be
that merchandise stand is getting bigger and bigger.
The merchandise stand is becoming a book stand. No, it's relatively widely available, and I think the great thing about bookshops is that they're such an important part of. It's interesting. They're bouncing back big time because people are frequenting them a lot more because people want that. Like Fiona and Leaf and Bower in Ballincollig, which is where you can get the book, and Waterstones in Cork. John, like Fiona was telling me recently that there's a lot of young people coming into the shop asking for fucking George Orwell 1980. Like they're asking for books that you wouldn't think would be on their radar.
And if you think about it, asking for answers or looking for answers,
absolutely. They are looking for it too in a tactile way. They don't really want to hear it through their phone, because the problem with the phone thing is it's what's the truth anymore. Like if it's not true in a book, it's fiction. It's a category. Whereas like on a phone, it's divisive. So it's kind of like manipulation. Whereas like you can choose a book and say, okay, that's the book I want now, and you can be taken to a place and a time that's different and that's unique, and that reignites your imagination. And if we don't start nurturing our imaginations, they'll be taken through evolution. We won't have any ability to think anymore, because the way AI is going now, you don't have to think really anymore if you don't want to. And that's scary, because like the evolution of us and our thought and our critical thinking is
Well, you can abandon thinking very easily, which is a very dangerous place. And there's a whole industry now that's out there telling you this is the way to go.
Well, but there's a counter movement, and I think I actually do feel young people are very clued in. I mean, we're very lucky in Ireland because we have a ancient culture and we have a landscape that has stories in it. And we can access so many amazing things by virtue of the country we live in and our history and our land and people like Moncton McGann and John Moriarty and Dr. Martin Shaw and all these people like are very much kind of, talking about the importance of that. I know Moncton has passed, but like he's an amazing guy. If a young person wants to start somewhere with that whole folklore mythology and connection to the land and the language and realize that there's a kind of a rich kind of a history and mythology and folklore where we have answers for things. Actually, modern problems are all there. They're all there. So the solutions to them are all in it, but that has to seep into your imagination for it to work. And these blocks that are being put up in front of us, distractions and hypnosis and kind of like bullshit that they're taking us, our generation, actually more so than younger people, I think, away from it. It's important to keep the old head screwed on.
I feel another book coming on, Joe.
Jesus. Yeah. We'll see how we go.
So with your permission, can we leave the listeners with a blast of your song?
Yes.
To go with the book, All Roads Lead to Where You Are.
That's it, yeah. Yeah, no problem.
Cool, thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks,
as always. It's been too long.
No, I know, it was great there. Thanks.
See you later.
Driven to the open roads, from Boston down to New Orleans, kept away by howling wolves, sank to ghost and radio beams, chased a song into the night, till every mile became a prayer beneath my feet. All roads lead to where you are, every broken string, each falling star. The wheel turns slow, finds its mark. True to dark, true to dark. All roads lead to where you are. Smoke in my hands, dust in my veins, rear view shows the ones I blame. Facing a dream keeps calling my name, but I can't go back, I can't explain. Every silence cuts like steel string wire, but I still burn, I still tire. All roads lead to where you are, every broken string, each falling star. The wheel turns slow, finds its mark. True to dark, true to dark. All roads lead to where you are. Left my key in the motel door, didn't need it anymore. No. The world keeps turning rough and scarred. Yeah, all roads lead to where you are. All roads
Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.